Okay, let's see. We're going to try this again. Um, we'll see who makes it back here, and I'm going to adjust this a little bit. And I'm going to make sure somebody tells me whether they can hear me or not, because that has been a bit of a problem in the past. So we'll see if anybody makes it over here and whether they can hear me. Miss Brenda can hear me. Hello, Mr. Patrick. Okay. Well, we tried to do this, or I tried to test this using Zoom so I could have face and hands. That didn't work out, so I will keep trying. I'll try again. And play around with Zoom. There's got to be a way to do it, so I'm just going to have to suss it out. But I thought, okay, well, I got people popping in, so we might as well go ahead and go through this deck anyways, since this is the way that we can do it right now. So I'll keep working at it. If I figure it out, I will definitely let everybody know. But I'm going to try to stay a little bit on target so that if somebody wants to watch this back, they don't have to wade through a whole lot of chit chat, even though generally at all of my walkthroughs, you have to wade through a lot of chit chat. I've actually had this deck for quite a while now. I want to say maybe almost a year. And I meant to do a walkthrough of it. And what I did is I put it in a walkthrough pile, and then that pile got overladen, and so then it just got lost in the pile. And so I've recently cleaned everything out, refreshed how, I'm setting things in lineup for walkthroughs, and pulled this out and was like, oh my goodness, like I'm so glad to have this back. So I've had this for a while. It's really a beautiful deck, and certainly well worth doing a walkthrough of. I know it's still available because Patrick, who I just saw was on, he just ordered it recently when I was going through all my decks and had showed it to him. I was like, this seems like a deck you would like. And so I know you can order it. The title of the deck is Roots and Rings Oracle Deck, and it is by Kat uh, Riles, kind of like Ryan, but with an L. So I'm thinking maybe Riles. And this is just one of the cards that come with it, and it has a garden spread on the back of it. Some of the other extra cards that came with it, this is more just sort of how to use the deck. There's a lesson here, allow it to talk to you, this type of thing. And then it sort of explains what this, and so if somebody can let me know if this is clear enough in terms of light and everything. I don't really think there's much else I can do, but let me know if you're having a problem seeing the cards, and then we'll just like scrap this idea if this isn't going to work. So, it gives you your spread because there's not a guidebook. So this is what you are getting here. But you do get what I would call a little white book, but it's blue. And so you get a fold out page here. It has a quote here by Anais Nin, and the time came, I love this quote, when the risk to remain tight in the bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. That sometimes what gets us to move forward is that it just becomes too painful to stay where we're at, and we're kind of forced to do so. And so then it has an alphabetical listing of the cards with just a very brief little idea. I will say that the cards themselves are pretty self-explanatory. It's not difficult to kind of figure them out, but you do have this. It's really nice and clear. It's easy to read. And so that's what you get in this. And it's nice, thick cardstock. So this is going to hold up well. It's not paper per se. It's an actual cardstock, so that's going to hold up quite nicely. So those are sort of the extra cards that you get. Now, Patrick might be able to give us some insight because he was on here. I think his came in the same type of setup. So because this has been, I would say I probably had this about a year. So I'm assuming it's coming in the same kind of bag as it was then. It comes with a great little engraved wood engraving that says Roots and Wings Oracle deck on here, which I think looks really great because it's so neutral. This is how I prefer. If something is going to come into the in a bag like this, I don't really like a lot of advertisement, or I don't even particularly like to have anything on the bag at all. I like it just to be nice and neutral and usable, but having something like this is great. Obviously, this is how I have done my decks as well, so I'm a little partial to it, but that's why, because I really like just a neutral bag that doesn't have anything labeling on it, but we still have the label of what it is on the little tag. So I quite love that. So you get that. I'm going to pull these out now. I kind of have to do it off the screen for a second. And I apologize. If I'd known this was going to be more than a test, I would have ironed this, but that's what you get. The backs of the cards are a little much, like they're a little they are kaleidoscope of sort of roots is what I see, sort of plants and roots kaleidoscope. It's a little bright, but it's still cool, and it's definitely reversible. As far as I can tell, it is reversible. So there's that. The cardstock is beautiful, except, now there is a bit of an exception here. The cardstock is that what I would call rose petal finish. And I know there's lots of debates about these weird things that we are calling the finish, but it literally does feel like a rose petal. And it's similar to some of the other decks that kind of, I feel like there's a bunch of decks that came out with this sort of deck cardstock, and it's beautiful, but I will say it can be a little bit sticky, not sticky, it's so hard to explain, grabby. So because so like here, this is an example. If you're just going like this, they're moving, but if they're rubbing up against each other, there's a little bit of friction that's caused because of the matte cardstock. It's beautiful. So I really don't know that it's necessarily a negative, and I'll shuffle this because these are not in any order. We're not going to be looking at these in order, and see if I can kind of show what I mean. Hopefully this isn't going to be ridiculously loud. They bend gorgeous. You can bridge it, and they bridge gorgeous, but then what happens is when you go to shove them together, you do have to give it a little bit of a work because of that grabby nature of the cardstock. So I don't know, like some people might consider that to be a negative. It bends gloriously, and it bridges gloriously. So it really is just that, and kind of shoving them together. Got a little bit of resistance because of that really soft that matte, beautiful matte. So I like this cardstock. I wouldn't say that's my ultimate favorite because of that grabbiness, but I do love it. So yeah, so I don't think it's a negative or a positive. It just depends on your preferences. Now, this is the first edition. The decks that are being sold right now are the second edition. And so one of the things that is different is for sure, and maybe Patrick can also fill us in on anything else that might be different. I'm trying to think which direction I need to go. There's a slight delay, so excuse me while I get them a little bit more centered, because that's going to drive my Libra self crazy. The font has changed, and I really like the new font on them. Not enough that I'm going to get another deck, because this deck is perfectly fine. But there is more of a larger and more of a hand script. You'll have to go and look. I think Patrick had set a link to the deck in the chat, so maybe he can throw it in one more time if he's still around. But I do really like the new font on the second edition. It's A, bigger, and B, it just looks really nice with the style of the deck. So, apparently it's potentially the backs, although of course we're seeing this through my iPhone, so how accurate that is I don't know, but there seems to be a thought that there's a little less color intensity to the back of the new edition. So only somebody would probably have them together in the same position or together could probably really tell that. But yeah, that's that. But again, is this enough for me to buy another? No, I'm not going to buy another deck, but I do like the new font. Would you say, Patrick, that the new font is quite readable? It's a script font, but it looks really nice, I think. But whether or not it's a little bit, how readable it is, sometimes can be a little bit different when they're those types of handwritten. Oh, okay. Apparently, Whale Song has the one first and second edition. Okay, and has confirmed that the backs are bright. So she's tamped that down a little bit, which I think is good because it is a little bit bold for the rest of the deck. Although there's great saturation in the deck, that seems a little bit extra bold. So I think that was smart of the creator to tamp that down a little bit. And Patrick does say that the new font is very readable. I think it looks great. So that's what you're looking at. The difference in the first and second edition are that the backs are slightly less bright or saturated, and that the font has been changed. It's larger and it's more of a handwritten font and yeah, this is readable. It's a little bit small because I have bad eyesight, but it's readable. I mean, I don't mind this at all. It doesn't take over the cards. It lets the image really pop. So it's not a negative. It's just that's what's changed. If you were to purchase this now, you're not going to get this font. So it's important for me to point that out. So yeah. Whale Song, would you say that the cardstock is the same in the second edition as the first edition? From what I understand, I think it is, but we've got great resources right here in chat, so we might as well make use of them because I obviously only have this edition to be able to show you. So let's go ahead and go through these. I do not have these in alphabetical order. I was lazy. Well, I was just testing Zoom, which was a failed test. And then I thought, well, people are here. Let's go ahead and do this walkthrough. And so I have not alphabetized them. And I probably wouldn't have, to be honest. If it was numbered, maybe, but not, I'm not going to because it's alphabetical, it would take too much time. Anyways, we're just going to look at them as they come. I'll probably make some piles. This is a deck that I have already used. As I said, I've had this, I would guesstimate a year. That could be an exaggeration. I might have gotten it last fall. I can't remember. I could look it up, but I can't know. I have used this deck, and I think it reads really beautifully. I think there is a nice a variety of keywords, and I think there's one or two that I think maybe are redundant, but for the most part, I find it to be of quite a readable deck. Very earthy feeling. Whale Song has confirmed that the cardstock is the same, and that the intensity of the front colors is the same. And that the second edition is the same width but slightly shorter. So thank you, Whale Song. I mean, it's so great. This is one of the nice things about having a live chat is that you might get some additional information out of people. So thank you so much for giving us that info there. Appreciate it. So let's just get into it and start looking here. Of course, you can see that we have the divine here. This feels, and I feel like there might be a Gaia here, but I'm going to start making some piles. But I feel like this is more of a general sense of the divine versus the Gaia. So we're gonna make piles together as we go. I really love this particular card because this is just so beautiful. This is held, but what we actually have is somebody holding themselves. Now, I will tell you, when I first saw this card, when I wasn't looking closely, because of the beautiful watercolor nature and sort of open style artwork, when I first saw it, I thought it was somebody holding a baby, right? I almost thought that, that this was somebody that was holding a baby or two babies in their arms. And then as I looked more closely, I obviously saw that it was somebody who was holding themselves, but also that the earth is coming up and encapsulating and holding this person. So I think that it has a simultaneous connotation of holding as well as being held, that I think are really beautiful, or is a beautiful card to have come up. I have had this come up for myself. This really speaks to me. I say all the time, I'm always talking about having grace for ourselves and having grace for others. And this card kind of embodies that. That is so really beautiful. So love this card. Here we have the passage. I love this with the rainbow on it. Well, you have this movement, right? So you have a movement card going on with the boat here. You also have a passageway being made by the rainbow itself. So it's not just movement, it's a shift, it's a transition where a passage is being taken, which I think is gorgeous. But you also have that connotation of the rainbow bridge, that this passage, where's this passage going? It could be to the land of the gods, it could be to the next life, to the summer lands. Like, there's a lot of connotations I think that you could come to with this idea of a passage. So it's not just movement, but it is a shift. It is a passage from one place to another. And I really love that blend there. It's not just movement, because I think there may be a movement card. It's a separate idea of passage. Here we have unfamiliar territory. This is like we're getting out into the mountains of Montana or something. That's the first thing that came to mind. We have the salmon that are jumping upstream, which is interesting. Okay, this may not be a salmon. So a salmon going upstream wouldn't be unfamiliar, right? Because they go back to the land of their birth, so to speak. So this would be more coming the other way. But I just like this idea of getting out of what's familiar. Now, if you live at the base of a mountain, more power to you. This is the known land for you. But for a lot of people, it's about getting out of that same routine. If you're always going to the store and going down the same streets, and just always walking the same path, this is a card that says go get out into the wilds, go out into unfamiliar territory. You might meet, salmon stands for wisdom, certainly in Celtic mythology and Celtic ideology. The salmon is about wisdom, and so that if you let yourself go out into unfamiliar territory, this is a place in which you may be able to find wisdom. Now, this is what I see, right? So this is just what my reaction to this card is. This is not what it may be. So let's take a quick look, just so we can also see what we get when we use this. And that's okay. I am happy with whatever comes to me, right? I don't think that I have to have exactly what the artist had in mind. And you might see something different. And that's great. That's just what I would see when I get this. So let's take a quick peek, though. I have no clue. Unfamiliar territory can symbolize either gasping for air in an uncomfortable situation or celebrating life, but only by way of going into the unknown, taking a leap to discover something new. So I like that, because you can it can go either way. Like, it is uncomfortable if you are going into unfamiliar territory, if you are leaping out of the water and not being able to quite catch your breath. That's scary, right? There's a little bit of that fear factor, but that's where you're going to find wisdom. I love it. And I love what Groot here has said. It's not her name. Please don't send me mean messages. She's okay with it, or she was. Now she might rescind my calling her Groot. A koi that has escaped a pond into a feeder stream. That's a little scarier, isn't it? And I love this. So, okay. So that's that one. I love this card. All right. I'm pulling two up at once. Here we have manifestation. Now, one of the things I wanted to mention here is that, we have, see this, like, these to me are, let me grab one because I have one that's right here. Now, I learned of them as being fairy stones. So there are stones, I've also heard them called hag stones. I've also heard them called crone stones, I believe. When I grew up, they were fairy stones. And so through the through looking through a fairy stone or a crone stone, you're able to see, well, for me, the way that I was raised, you could see into Fey land. So you could see the Fey world. Obviously, if it's a crone stone, I'm assuming the same thing, you can see into the other world in some way with them. Now, I'm not saying that that's what these are, but I that's what I see these as, is she's covered in fairy stones or crone stones, and we see that motif that's also shown in this. That's why I brought it up. Yeah, the backs are, somebody's bringing up the fact that the backs are off-centered in the first edition. Now, I don't know if that's the case. If that's the case with the second edition or not. It's not enough to bother me, but I also trim decks, and so sometimes that makes setbacks not perfect. That does not bother me, but I know that there are people that would bother, and you can only, we just have to go with what works for us. But that's what I see there. Again, I don't know if that's what those are, but that's what they are to me. So just bringing that up here. So I love this idea of manifestation with the seeing clearly and being able to see into the other world. And then, of course, the rabbit is manifesting all kinds of life, right? Put two rabbits together and you're going to manifest much life. Manifestation, obviously we have that one. Here we have the home card, which I think is beautiful. I love the simplicity of this deck. It's just beautiful. It's sweet. It is simple. It is earthy. Those, I guess, the words that I would probably say is that it is sweet. It is simple. It is just and it's earthy, sweet, simple, earthy. It just has, but it says what it needs to say. It's home. The birds are circling home. The birds are coming home to roost. That type of thing. Yes, it feels very Lenormand-y, B-Jam. I agree. It just has that enough of an image to hone in on what we want, what we need it to hone in on, and not too much, which is really beautiful. So here we have home. I love this card. I love this card here. It is the potential of this seed, and I love that, if this seed was underground, all we would be seeing is this little, actually, all we would be seeing is that little tiny thing, that's the little tiny sapling or little tiny seedling that's growing out. But underneath the ground, so much is going on. So many roots are being put out. I think it's such a beautiful card because it's not just potential for me because of the image, but it's also unseen potential, that you may only be seeing this much actually happening in your life, but that doesn't mean that you're not putting lots of roots out and growing. And so I think that's beautiful. Somebody said that they feel like the black windows are sad. Well, the birds are coming home to roost and it's going to be full of life. I just find it, just a clean, clear house card like Lenormand. Um, it has, yeah, I would agree, Shay. It's kind of like an earthy, more of a, a lot of times fortune telling style decks like Lenormand and Kipper and things like that. They're much more social oriented, where this is a far, like, it's almost like an earthier Lenormand system in some ways. I definitely agree. Anyways, I absolutely love this card. The Seasons, of course, is beautiful. This can stand in for just just the understanding of the seasons, and the seasons are turning and the seasons are changing, but it also has that connotation of cycles, right? Bigger cycles that are just gorgeous. And I think that that's really beautiful. So it's just, again, simple and sweet and earthy. That's my, so far so good. That's my keywords. And but you see the seasons, right? You see the seasons. You see this, the spring just opening up here into summer, into fall, and the leaves dropping into the bare branches, and you see that cycle. And I think it is really gorgeous. So love that. Here we have spiritual guidance, which I think is beautiful. I was, just as I was saying this, I was thinking it feels like also a bigger card deck than you often get with Oracle. And so I'm just pausing for a minute to say that there are 63 cards. So that's a nice, meaty Oracle deck. I don't, unless it's a Kipper or Lenormand system, I don't like Oracle decks to be under 40 cards. And so I like that that's a nice meaty number. Anyways, that's a random, throw that in there. Spiritual guidance with a feather, again, I think is beautiful. I think the combination of the keyword and the simple image is more than enough to tune you into. You could also use this in a way in which you shuffled, and then found the spiritual guidance card and saw what cards were on either side of that to get your message in a very fortune telling style. You could certainly do that, which I think would be really cool. Of course, you can do that with any deck, but this just made me think of it with this deck. It would be cool to see that or to use it that way. I love, of course, bear is totem for me. So this is an animal I work with, animal energy that I work with quite closely. And I love this idea of intuition. I think a lot of times with bears, you get things, especially in Oracle decks, you're going to get like hibernate, or you're going to get strength, or something like that. And so I really like this intuitive energy of the bear card here, because that certainly works for the way that, of course, all those other things can come into play. And that's the thing. We don't have to just go off of what's here. This is a starting point. No one word is ever going to encapsulate everything that a card says to you in the moment. So I think that having that, though, as a starting point, is stepping a little bit outside of the box of what we normally see with bears. And so I quite love that. I'm going to make an animal pile. Here we have the sheep with humility. Again, I really love the white factor here. There's no fill-in, and then the sheep are just here. I like her use of white space. It is humble. The sun is blooming overhead. The sheep are doing sheep things. They're just doing what it is that they are doing, and what they're supposed to be doing without much fanfare, other than the fact that there is the fanfare of the sun itself, which is beautiful. But it doesn't need any grand parades happening. It's just sheep under the sun doing what sheep do. And so I do love that. Here we have the duality card, which is really gorgeous. But what I love is that it's not just about duality being over here as separate, but it is the understanding of the way that duality, the the dual parts, I can't speak, the dual parts are overlapping. So it's the way in which they are stronger together. It's the way in which the intersection comes here. So between these two colors, we see the intersection of when those colors blend together and what they create. So it does speak to duality, which is something that I work with. I do work with ideas of duality and masculine and feminine and inner and outer and upper and lower. It is a way as the Libra duality concepts work well with my brain. But this, I love the way that it speaks to then how those things interact with each other. So love that concept. Here we have a very Taurusy perseverance card. Of course, we have a bull with very large horns. Is this an auroch? I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it seems like it is that old powerful bull here. But we think of Taurus and Earth and bulls as that solid energy, that idea of perseverance. If they're going to come through the china shop, there's not anything you're going to do to stop them, right? They're just going to persevere through from one side of the shop all the way through to the other side of the shop. So that is you get that sense with once that this creature would start moving forward, they're going to persevere until they get to wherever it is that they want to get to, and they're not going to be stopped. So yeah, so there we have that. So next we have blind. So there are some shadow cards. I wouldn't say that there is a lot of shadow cards here in this deck, but there are. Like even this idea of being held has a bit of a feeling. It's not a shadow card. Being held is not something that is shadow, but there you could read this in that sense of feeling alone and needing to be held. Like there is something poignant about this card. And so I like this one is just the idea of what are we not seeing, right? This is so interesting. But what I think is also interesting is that the person's face is obscured. So again, we have that idea of them not being able to see, so the blindness coming outward, but what about the blindness going inward or towards them, that other people are not seeing them? And so again, I love that some of these cards you really do, depending on the reading, depending on the question, depending on what is going to happen, what way is the energy going, this could be turned towards that person and it could be coming away from that person. And there's just something about that I really appreciate. Here we have the inner vision card. It's a beautiful eye, quite beautifully done eye, I would say there. This idea of inner vision, the third eye, it makes quite, I don't know what else to say about it. It's a perfect image for it. You have that sense of looking inward. You have that high priestess vibe here. This is looking into either looking from the place of the depths of our power or looking inward into our power. It's again that same way. Which way is the gaze? Okay. All right. I think, well, hopefully we're back. I'm going to wait till somebody says we're back. I guess this is the problem with using your phone. I might need to put it on I might need to put it onto airplane mode or something like that if it happens again. I don't get too many calls, but the one time I try to go live with my phone, this is what happens. So if it happens again, I'll try putting it on airplane mode, but right now I'm not going to get it off its rocker again. So, so that's what we have here is inner vision. What am I doing? I'm making some piles, but I'm starting to lose track of my piles. I love this worker. I like B cards. I like the concept of community. I like the concept of hard work. I love the uniformity of the hives. I obviously have, my deck has a hexagon shape to it because I love that particular shape. I feel like things are a little blurry. Just a minute. Let me see if I can fix that. See if I can get it to, it wasn't blurry before, and now I feel like it's blurry. I wonder if I put something to just sort of reacclimate it. Maybe other people aren't seeing it blurry, but I'm seeing it kind of pixelated. So I'm going to wait a minute and see if somebody else is seeing the same thing as I am. I don't know why that would be the case. Okay, so they're saying it looks clear, so I'm just going to ignore it then. Okay, good. Then I'm going to keep persevering onward. Thank you, Mr. Patrick. I'm going to keep moving forward, but I love this card. Get in there and do the work that needs to be done. If you want the honey, you've got to do the work. Right? You have to do the work, and you generally have to work together as well. So I quite like that. And I like that it's the worker bee. It's not the queen bee. It's not, things like that. It's the worker bee. He's the one that's going out there and doing the work and getting it done. So I love that. Okay. That is an animal. So I'm making an animal pile, I guess. Why not make some piles? This one I thought was really, oh no, something. Okay. Sorry, folks. Technical difficulties. I lost my computer screen. This is an interesting one with a vulnerability in the heart, kind of holding your heart in your hand. You're kind of holding your heart outward and hoping that somebody is going to treat it well, right? It's like you're handing over your heart to somebody, and you're really hoping that that they treat you well. Oh my goodness, can I just say that Miss Bell is underneath here, and something she ate has not agreed with her. Holy goodness, that's making my eyes water. Just the information that you need to know right now. I'm like, I've got allergies too. I can't even smell that well. Okay, sorry folks. For those people who do not want that information, I apologize. But I love this card. You're holding your heart in your hand and saying, please treat me kindly. Now I'm all out of, my brain's on another. I love this card. This is the beautiful journey card. I think this is so gorgeous. Now, I guess some people might say, okay, I've got my piles. Where's my piles? I guess you can say, that these two cards could be similar, go out into unfamiliar territory. I think this is different, right? This is a different energy. It's like, go out, stretch yourself. Could you say that's the same with the journey? Yeah. But this just has more of that focus on your journey and your path, and where do you want that to look like? Are you getting out there, and are you walking, or are you standing still? So I do feel like, is there a little bit of overlap here potentially? Sure, but I don't feel like it's redundant. In my personal opinion, it hasn't felt redundant in readings either. This is one of my favorite cards. I absolutely love this card. So, love it. It's absolutely gorgeous. Mother energy. So here we have the mother protecting her eggs. Very protective posture, right? While you think, oh, that's really sweet. It's a little cute bird, and with its nest, the bird with its eggs. This is a very, very protective body language. In fact, there's been a little video going around Facebook lately of a mother. There's like a big truck or something coming over her nest, and she's like going into this posture of protection. That's really powerful. And so this feels very powerful, even though you say, oh, it's a sweet little bird. There's a strength to this mother card that I appreciate. This is also one of my favorite cards. You can see that this is obviously on the front of the guidebook, so I'm guessing that it's also one of the artists. You can see it also on the medallion that is on here. And I love, though, that we have the just because we're looking for balance and being rooted, it doesn't mean that we aren't also reaching for the sky, right? Being balanced just gives us the ability to leap into the air. It gives us the ability to go high because we've got those roots there. So I think that that is, I just think it's very simple, very sweet, very earthy. And I love this card. This is a beautiful representation of hope. I love the way that it looks to me like she used salt, but she might not have. She could have just kind of lifted watercolor. I'm sorry, because I do watercolor. I think of these things. But I do feel like she used the sprinkling of salt to create that shadowed flowers, which I think is so gorgeous. Because there is a shadow side to hope. And I need to just do a whole video on hope. Myself and the word hope have had a long and difficult and poignant and uplifting and painful experience. And so I like that there is shadow to this hope card. There is still movement forward and there is still the sun ahead, but there is a recognition of shadow, because if we have hope, we have fear, right? They're two sides of the same coin. And so I just think that this is a beautiful depiction for me of the word hope. Here we have release. Again, very simple. It's just that scattering release there of the stones. I think it is so sweet. But it gets, again, I feel like her artwork does just what it needs to do to say what it needs to say. It doesn't do more. It doesn't do less. It just does what it needs to do to say, let go, release. I also kind of like the feel of casting here, because with that release, you might actually gain a message, or you're going to generally, the idea here is to let go of what needs to be let go of, and you're going to gain something from it. So I do see a little bit, as a caster, I do see a little bit of casting there, that I'm going to release, but what I'm going to gain from that release is going to be worth letting go of what's in my hand. But again, that's just me. Here we have the star. Now, you could read this in many ways, right? For me, this is a lot to do with navigation, you know, because we have sort of the hope card, which a lot of people think about the star as to do with hope. I don't actually associate the star as much with hope. I associate the star in tarot more with the having faith and having trust that you're going to navigate your way forward. It is that fixed point in the sky that allows you to navigate your way forward. But there's a lot of different ways that this can show up in a reading, and I just think it's beautiful. Beautiful. Here we have the lovers. So there are some cards that you could see as connecting, as you've seen already with the star. I'll try to make a pile here, but I've got other piles going, so we'll probably miss it. The lovers card here, of that sort of coming together. I like the third eye that's being shown here, because you really do have that sense of higher self, you know, conscious self, subconscious self that I work with. Sorry, folks. I don't know how to do it. Well, we're just going to keep plugging through. I apologize to people watching back. This is not going to be fun. But it's fun to do this live with people, because I get to see people's comments and things like that, and the way that they see the cards. So I enjoy this. I know it's not the same as doing a you know, a full production walkthrough that I do. It has different appeals. Are we even back now? I'm sitting here talking, but I think we're back. So it's just one of those things. We gain sort of a community conversation about the deck, and we lose sort of the production. So, you know, there's a place for both, right? A place for both. And, you know, of course, apparently, between now and the next time, I'll figure out how to make it so people can't call me in the middle of it. Okay, Lover's card. I'm going to put that over here. Here we have the Dreamer. I really like this card, Head Up in the Clouds. I mean, it's just, again, simple. It says enough to say what it's saying. It's a dream. It's your head up in the clouds. It's a dreamer. It doesn't apply any connotations to what that means. It doesn't say that it's bad to be a dreamer, which is something I got a lot growing up from teachers, and then certainly in the hyper-religious atmosphere that I was in, being a dreamer and having a strong imagination was really considered to be negative in the way that, again, I was raised in a very fundamental religion, and that was a negative connotation. So I had a lot of something that was integral to who I am is being a dreamer. And so having something that is integral to who you are be something that is bad is really bad. It's a bad situation to be in. It has a lot of ramifications. So I love that it doesn't necessarily, now you do need to come down. Like, this does make you, the boat a little unsteady to be like this. And so I do like that you can kind of see both sides here. You can say, okay, steady yourself and don't fall into the water necessarily, but it doesn't feel like a negative card. So I appreciate that in a personal way. Here we have Gratitude, which is really beautiful. Now, I would say this is maybe one time in which I don't necessarily directly see the image to the keyword. I mean, I have gratitude for birds, and I like the full spread wings and the gratitude for the sun and the night and the cycles of things. I'm not getting a particularly strong hit on this. I like the term, and the image doesn't get in the way of the meaning for me. Let's just take a peek at what is said here just to see if it gives us any hit. Somebody else might be able to come up with a way that this works. Again, it doesn't not work. It just doesn't have such a tight key in. Responding to the world around you and everything within you with thankfulness. Feel the abundance grow when you take the time to stop and appreciate it all. Yeah. Again, it works. It's not like I can't work with this card, but it's that one that was kind of like, I'm not entirely sure what the image is to do with, other than just spread your wings and just enjoy life and be grateful for what you have. I can go with that with just the keyword, but that's just me. I agree. That's one of my problems with oracles, Shay, is the fact that most of the time they can't, whereas this is one that I actually think works well, and it will work as a multi-card reading. It's not just a pull one or pull two or pull three. I think you can actually do full readings with it. That's my experience anyway. I love this card. I love trees. I love a tree in a boat. It's a moving tree. Something is so steady and so solid, but they have that sense of movement here. We have the cycles of the moon. She definitely likes canoes. Definitely likes canoes. But I just think that this has an air to mystery about this, and I absolutely love it. I think it works quite beautifully. Here we have the Voice. And this is, again, as I've talked about in some of the other cards, I really like that it's both a voice going outward, but it is also a voice speaking of the person, if you root yourself in the middle here, this can be both you, the voice that's coming outward, but the voice that's going describing you as well. And that could have light and shadow just depending on the question and depending on where that's going. So there is something about this card that I do find, again, poignant, and I think it is that multi-directional factor that I've picked up in a couple other of the cards that I wish, or that I enjoy about it. I don't know. There's something about that. Yeah, or the collective voice. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways in which I feel like that voice can work that I quite appreciate. Here we have Blossom. I really like the feet that are here because it's at Blossom where you are feeling, right? You don't have to be in a beautiful sculpted garden. You don't have to have everything, all of the perfect circumstances to grow. Just blossom where you're at. And so I don't know. It's just sweet, simple, and I agree. I think that Shay, I think you're hitting it on the head. There is something really impressive about simplicity in the art, but depth in the response and in the ways in which you could approach the cards. So I think that she's done a really good job that way. And again, in terms of the readings that I've gotten with it, it has worked quite well. Some people don't like the mouth one. One of the nice things are there's no numbers. Like if a card really bothers you, it certainly can be removed, but I wouldn't want the concept of the voice to be removed from this reading for myself, but you certainly can. I don't do that with tarot, but you could do that with an oracle. I love this breath because this card has come up with me a few times, and what I really like about this is it's the space between the beating of the wings, right? You know, when I think about breath, it's the liminal space between one sound or one heartbeat to the next. The breath to me is that space between. So I like the movement of the wings here because it really speaks to that between the lifting of the wings and the dropping of the wings. That's the breath. That's the space. And I just find this to be really beautiful. And I have had this show up in readings for myself too. I just love it. It's gorgeous, simple, and very evocative. Um, Here we have the Magician. So here's another of the ones we could relate directly to the tarot card. We even have the as above, so below. We have the lemon scott over his head. And so we definitely have that sense of manifestation. All of the things that you understand of the Magician that you can apply to this card. And it feels very, you know, where we have the lightness of the breath and the use of the white space. For this, we have this bold color and that strong manifestation feel of the Magician. So she uses her space very, very well. Okay, so putting that there. Here we have the Sun. Again, definitely a nod. She's clearly somebody who uses tarot, I would say. Yes, that's a very good point too, Molly. I don't think any of the forms, I don't want to say any because there's probably a way, you know, obviously the divine definitely to me has a very feminine vibe to it. But most of the figures are very neutral. They could be male, they could be female. They are neutralist. That's not what I meant. They seem to be genderless. And that is quite lovely. You know, we see the sunflowers here, all of the connotations of the sun, all of the connotations of, it's just beautiful. There's no naked babies. It's a beautiful sun card. You have the sense of vibrancy. You have the sense of all of the beauty of the sun and the abundance feel of the colors here. So it's just, she uses, again, her white space and her color space very, very well. And her use of black, she uses also well. We've seen in the skies, and we've seen this like looming in the mother, this looming darkness, and her standing sort of as a sentry and as a guard against the darkness. So she, you know, does it make sense? Like what I'm saying was in terms of her use of space and color and darkness, I just think are just beautifully done in a simple way. Here we have the Death card. Again, we have that sense connotation of that connection with tarot, but also, oh, maybe the second edition doesn't have the sunflowers. Maybe Miss Whale Song could check that, or Patrick has the second edition. Maybe somebody could double check that. I'm not, or maybe the minis have that part cut off. I'm not sure. Molly is saying that her edition has just rays, which I think would be gorgeous, right? I mean, you could certainly cut that off and it would still be really beautiful. So I don't know, maybe there's another edition out there that we're not aware of. Oops, I'm going the other way. Um, Patrick says his second edition that he just got, so he just purchased this and got in the mail, has the sunflowers on it. So is there a small edition? Did somebody talk about a mini? I didn't even know there was a mini. I think I would really like a mini in this deck, because you could do a lot of cartomancy spreads with the mini. So anyways, maybe that's what I'll do is get the mini. Does the mini have the new script on it, I wonder? Anyways, I'll check that later. Oh, maybe it has less cards too. I'll have to look up the mini. I have no clue. So here we have the death card. Again, I like the bones here, the skull here. I like the flowers with the petal dropping. It's a different season. It's a different time. So, quite like that. Love that there's a void card. I actually like void cards a lot. There's a deck that I really love that has the void. It's the Children of Litha Tarot has an extra card that is a void card that I have had come up really powerful in readings. So for me, the void and darkness is not something that's negative. It's, again, liminal space. It's a space between. There's a lot of power there and there's a lot of depth there. And so I really love there being a void card here. So yeah, void card that goes here. Love this fire card. I mean, it's just beautiful. It's you have the fire, you have the smoke, you have the light ring around it. I mean, it in terms of the artwork, it just has that beautiful energy of like the Journey card. I just love this vision of the fire card. And the idea of feeding the fire and tending the fire, sending messages with the smoke of the fire, the illumination of the fire. Like, I just feel like there's so many ways that you could dive into. Yeah, no, this is, from what I understand, this is the first edition. Sorry, people are questioning about the lack of sunflowers. I don't know of any way to tell. This is not the second edition because of this, and I've had this for I bought this, I want to say last September, within the last year, but pushing closer to a year, is when I bought this. So whether there was an edition before this one, I don't know. So unfortunately, the second edition, apparently, that you can buy now has the sunflowers. So here's the fire card. Love it. Here we have a world card, another card that we could see with the tarot majors. That idea of everything being in harmony, everything being in balance, the world is at peace, the world is in harmony, that type of thing. So I love that. Here we have Earth Mother. So there are actually, I'm going to put these together. So we have Mother, and this must be what I was thinking about in terms of there is some redundancy between, now this is protective mother energy. We have the divine here, as well as a female, almost Gaia feel. And then we have the earth mother here. So this one does feel slightly redundant to me. Now, I think this one is different. Could you read these two the same? Yes. I could probably take Earth Mother out and just have the divine sense here and be perfectly fine with that. Yeah, this could possibly. I wonder if there's an Earth Father. I haven't looked at them one by one yet. I just used them. I haven't had them come up. So maybe this would stand for the Empress. So yeah, they're beautiful. I have nothing against any of them, but I try to look with Oracle decks whether or not we have redundant cards. I also am not a huge fan of bodies with non-heads on it. We do have the pomegranate, so it could be leaning more in that direction as well. But I prefer this one if I was to keep one. This could be High Priestessy, whereas this is Empress. I could see that. That makes sense, Al. So, you have to just kind of come to an understanding of how you would see these differently. But I think I agree with Al. I think that you could see this as more the high priestess versus the earthy mother Gaia energy that we would think in modern sense. We think a little bit more. Again, this is probably one of the ones that my least favorite, just because I would like her head to be there. That's a personal preference for me. Okay, so I'm gonna stick those in the major arcana pile for now because they could be the major arcana. I love this time card. Again, I like the use of the moon cycles. I like the use of the sand here. That's just interesting. If you used reversals, you could certainly use that, of whether time was slipping away from you or time was building up. I think it is, what is somebody saying about Lily of the Valley? Because I love Lily of the Valley. This deck has only a selection. Which your mini is, Whale Song, your mini only has a selection of the cards? I'm not sure. Anyways, I love this idea of time and time, because this could be both a positive and a shadow card, right? Time getting away from us. Time can be in our favor, but time can also be working against us. So again, I feel like this is very neutral energy. Of course, you all know I love dandelions. I love wish cards. I just love this card. I just love this card, period. So here we have father energy, which would definitely be, you could use as the emperor in terms of, we have some cards that are very clearly related to the majors. So if we had that for the empress and this one for the high priestess, this could certainly be the emperor. But I do like that it's just father. It's father energy, and all of that means. Obviously, this is father in its divine sense of how fatherhood should be, and we don't all of us have experience of father in that way. But stag is also a strong animal energy from Celtic lore, and it just has a lot of power to the energy of the father. So I quite love that. That could go in tarot, but that could also go in the animal pile. I love, well, we have one that just says mother. There is a card that just says mother, and it's this one. But yeah, I mean, obviously, the only perfect deck is the deck we make for ourselves, right? Okay, so here we have the wisdom card. Which is beautiful. I love the use of the owl energy here. It's simple, it's clean, it's clear wisdom. And I quite love that. Yeah, I don't know if there is a divine father, because the one that goes with the high priestess would be the Hierophant. So I'm not sure. We'll see if something pops up for it. I really love this card. I've had this one show up for me a couple times. This idea of just rising up, that movement and that motion, and I love the big wing that swooshed right here. I really like that energy of just rise up, like rise above this. And for me, it's come up in that sort of just rise above this, just get up above all of this right now. And so that I've just had a lot of good experience with that card. I love that there's a healer card, number one. Number two, I love that this healer is a snake. I'm not a fan of snakes having the negative Garden of Eden connotation, and especially in pagan decks. Like, I feel like decks that say that they're pagan, but they still bring in some of that Garden of Eden mythos into the pagan decks, even though that is a Christianized mythos, and then sort of bring that into a more pagan one. I feel like it is not really proper for me. So I really love that we have a snake here as a healer and that positive connotation as that transformer, the healer energy. I think it is beautiful and I really appreciate that. I love this Kindred card. I feel like this is a very ancestral card. It's also kindreds in terms of kindred's connection, those people that are just kindred spirits. I love Anne of Green Gables, and the concept of the kindred spirits is really awesome to me and something I relate with. Those people that you find, it doesn't matter if they're family or they're not family, they are kindreds of your soul, right? So I love that, but you can also have a feeling of ancestral energy here as well. I can't remember. Let me just peek here. I don't think there's an ancestor card. So for me, this card has been brought up with that connotations of, because you see that down in the roots as well. So I really see this as being our kin and our kindred, those that we find for ourselves in this world, but also those that are in um, our ancestry. Here we have abundance, which I love. There she is, just her arms are full of flowers. They are full. It is, I don't know, Shay. I know I've used this before. Like I said, I've had it for a while. It got lost in my walkthrough pile because I feel like you would have bought this instantly. But what I like is that this has a head. So we have that sense of abundance and glorious abundance here and creativity and color and everything, but we have a face, which I prefer over not having a face. That's just a personal pet peeve. And thank you, Elle. I didn't do that on purpose. This is a color I wear a lot, and obviously I am drawn to this color because I have this cloth. So clearly it's a color that I love. Here we have joy, which I do think is beautiful and joyful. I love the how they are so shiny. So we're pausing for my beautiful nails. Dazzle Dry. I am a huge fan of Dazzle Dry. It's a nail polish system. It is not, I just do it at home, but it is because people stare at my hands for all kinds of walkthroughs and videos, nail polish is a big problem for me because it comes off and I have to re-put it on over and over and over again. This is the best nail polish if you do the whole system and use the bottom layer, use the nail polish, use the top coat. It's super, super shiny, but it also lasts me for about 2 weeks with a little bit of tweaking usually on this nail. And I have tried everything and it takes 5 minutes to dry. You literally put the top coat on, you put the timer for 5 minutes and it's hard as a rock. I seriously wish they would sponsor me, but it is it was a game changer for me. Anyways, now we have stopped. That was not, and it is vegan. Yes, it is vegan and it is natural. So this was not sponsored by Dazzle Dry, but it is a huge game changer for someone like me who people are constantly like looking at my nails. I feel, I know I don't have to paint my nails, but the fact of the matter is that hour-long walkthroughs, readings, people are literally face to face with my nails constantly, so I think they need to look decent. So, and I just like nail polish. Okay. We're stopping now. Moving on. Joy. I know. Roots and Wings Oracle brought to you by Dazzle Dry. Okay. Moving back to the Oracle, but thank you for your compliments to my nails. They do look nice. Joy is beautiful. I like the posture here. I like the leaping feeling and just the way that the body is presented and the colors really do speak to joy. And I think it is gorgeous. This one I think is interesting. Now, this does not have a head, which generally annoys me in decks. But what I like is that it's in the mode of becoming. It's just, this painting doesn't feel finished, right? It only has one wing, or the wings aren't open. You can only see one arm. It doesn't quite have a head yet. So I actually really like this one because it is this sense of this painting is in the process of becoming. This person is in the content process of transforming and becoming either becoming human and or losing its humanity and going into the butterfly, but it is in the midpoint. Transformation is uncomfortable. Transformation is a process of shifting from one thing to another. You are in the midst of a shift, and I think that it works really beautifully. And so I quite like this, even though I am traditionally not somebody who likes things that don't have heads and stuff like that. I really like this. There is not a sense of things being solidified yet. We're in the middle of that transformation. Transformation hasn't fully taken place yet. I think it's gorgeous. It works for me. I can understand why it wouldn't work for everybody, but I do like it. I love the Storm card. Again, I think her use of color and light and darks is really gorgeous. It's something I greatly appreciate, that we can have just light and buoyant and brilliant, beautiful colors, and we can have still that sense of depth in the colors in the decks. Which I think is really gorgeous. So this idea of storm, and storm to me doesn't have a negative connotation. It can, right? A storm is, I don't think there's actually, I think they're discussing if there's an actual head there. I'm going to put it up nice and close so you guys can decide. I don't think I'm centered, but sorry, I can't see my phone, so let's try to move it a little bit this way. I don't think there's a head there, but if it helps you to feel like there is one, go for it. Oh, Veronica's like, I know it's not a head. I just pretend it's a tiny head. Anyways, storm is just a natural occurrence, and we can harness the electricity, we can harness all kinds of things, energy about it. It's just simply an act of nature. Are we going to get in out of the storm? Are we going to dance in the storm? Are we going to harness the storm? What are we going to do with this energy that's a case? But it is a moment of storm that's going out. So I quite love that. Here we have the Strength card. Again, kind of straight out of tarot. I do too. I'm a storm hound. I love them. I open all the windows. I adore storms. You know, we have a lion, we have strength, we have all the connotations of the Strength card. So that definitely goes into the tarot pile. I love the bound card. You know, we have the blind card here, and I love the feeling of being bound. But what are we bound by? Just like we're being held in our own arms here, we also can be bound by our own arms. This has a very Eight of Swords feel to it, the way that we are binding ourselves, the way that we have a lot of our own work to do to untangle what's going on with us that keeps us bound, I think is really powerful. So I love that. This card I love, but you know, I love trees, I love roots. This is literally like an image of me. Like if I were to like project myself in the way that I see energy working and divination working and my ancestors working and even animal spirits working, right? We have the middle world and the lower world, where you sit on this piece of land. You have sea almost, and you have sky of the Celtic mentality there. I feel like Shay will love this one as much as I do. But this is literally me with my hands in the roots. This is how I do readings. This is how I see myself energetically function within the world. Like this is literally could be, if I would have, and I never came up with it, if I came up with you know, a representation of the way I see myself existing energetically in the world, it would be this. It's the web, it's the roots, it's all of it. So to me, this is like a perfect gift to self. You know, when you can get a deck that has that feeling like I could have done that, not saying that I could have painted it or that I could have, you know, come up with the idea or anything like that, but when you see it, there's that resonance that says, I could have done that because it's so much comes out of the way I see things, which is so powerful when you have that experience in somebody else's deck. Just like we had the powerful, beautiful sun card with or without the, oops, now can I find it? I probably stuck it in some other random pile. I, whether you have the sunflowers or not, it's this beautiful luminous sun, and I think that the moon is just as beautiful and just as luminous. I love the reflection in the water, but then it also looks like a pearl. The energy and the power of the moon does not come easily, and so I see a pearl here. I don't think that that's really a pearl. The cards are not blurry. So if you're seeing, I thought I was seeing blurriness, though not everybody was. If you are seeing blurry, it is because of me doing this live. It's one of the reasons I probably should not do live walkthroughs. But I will say that the cards in person are very crisp. There is no blurriness to the actual cards. So, yeah, I mean, this is, like I said, I like these types of live walkthroughs. There is definitely reasons why it's not a good idea, but also reasons why it's fun to do. So it's kind of, you give something to get something. So it's probably, but let me just say for the record that the cards, there's nothing blurry about these cards. So that you're not, so you're, you know, you're seeing that. Okay, so put that over here. Here we have the union card, this coming together. I like this because this is very similar to a handshake card in fortune telling cards, or a ring card, or a marriage card. And so you have I like that connotation. Now we do have the lovers card and hand fasting. Thank you. I can't even think of that. Hand fasting, those types of cards that you get often in fortune telling decks that can be really helpful. And so while some might say that the lovers card is the same, for me that's very different. The lovers card for me is about choice and being in complete union with self, higher self, conscious self, subconscious self. Whereas this is far more like a ring card, a hand fasting card, a handshake card in fortune telling decks. And I think that works really well. Colleen says, off track, should I get the illuminated? They're so different. They're two totally different decks. I love the illuminated earth. I use it constantly in my ancestor readings and things like that. And oh my, I need to plug my computer in. So it's a deck that I use a ton. It's just not the same. It's a different deck than, oops, sorry folks for the loudness. I got to plug that in or I'm going to not be able to see the chat. So they're very different. So I would say you need them both, but don't let me be that person that tries to, you know, talk people into having decks. Okay, so union card. Oops, got two cards. I love this community card. Again, love community cards. I love cards about coming together, the connections that we have. We don't live on an island. We are interconnected to the people around us, sometimes for good, sometimes for ill. You know, I do love and enjoy community cards. Good fortune card. Absolutely love this. Again, feels very cartomancy. Has that style there of good fortune that I love. That, you know, if you're paying attention, you're going to stumble on these beautiful opportunities that you might otherwise miss. This I think is really beautiful. I don't, I don't feel like you see decks with the word, with goodness, like just that concept of goodness and rightness, and what that means is not concrete. What goodness means to each of us is very different. Again, I feel like you could call this card grace as well, grace for self, grace for others, seeing ourselves in others, seeing the goodness that exists in us. Again, I guess we are using, it's pulling up, some of my own shadows, right? But being raised in a fundamental religion that says you are essentially bad, you are essentially born evil and must, be saved from your evilness. To have cards like this that understand essential goodness, and that evil is something that is created, in my opinion, this this to me brings up all kinds of poignancy for me as a personal healing kind of thing, and so I appreciate that, because I don't think I've ever stumbled on a card like that. Love this card. I mean, it's a bear, it's wildness. It's a bear. It's a wolf. I was just thinking that there is a wolf, there is a bear, and there is the hope raven card. So it has all three of mine. That's always important to me. So wildness, I love it. I love the howling at the moon. I just love the card. It's a beautiful depiction of a wolf. It's a bear wolf. Yes. But we have, what I was thinking is, oh, there is a bear here. Oh, there is. I'm trying to find the hope card. In the hope card, which is, poignant for me too, because Raven's about messages and magic and having to work through those things. But I feel like, even though that may or may not be a Raven, it's a nod to me that all the pieces of my energy there are there. So I love that. I wish there was a spider. Here we have a knight card. I don't think we have particularly a day card. We have sun and the moon. I don't know that I need a specific night, but I think you could use this a little bit more in shadow. That idea of the night and the long night and the long night of the soul. Also, there's peace and there's quiet. For me, I have always found peace in the darkness. When I think of, like, if somebody were to say, fill yourself with light as a healing meditation, I would say fill yourself with darkness, fill yourself with night. To me, would be more healing to me than filling myself with light. That doesn't mean I'm a vampire and opposed to the light, but nighttime has a strong connotation for me of silence and quiet and peace and healing, versus where a lot of other people use light, I would probably use dark, not in a negative way, but in the way that I see darkness. So anyways, that's beautiful. Here we have the guarded. You think about the Hansa symbol, you think about the seeing eye. I have a eye charm that hangs at my doorway. So that idea of guarding yourself and protecting yourself, you're keeping that vulnerable place of the palm, instead of vulnerable with it holding the heart, we have the eye that's saying, I'm watching, right? I am watching, I am guarded, I have boundaries, which is important. So definitely, Molly, it's a counterpoint to the other one where the heart was there. So I really like that, though, because there are times in which we need to be guarded. There are ways in which we must have boundaries, and sometimes we need that to be reminded to us. So I like having a card like that. Here we have the fox for crafty, wily, smart, be smart, be wise, be witty. That I think of with a fox, be crafty. Don't let anything sneak by. Don't let opportunity pass you by. Find the way outside the box. Very Lenormand-esque for me. I thought this was really interesting because it's the direction card, and yet you could see this as the balance card. Now, there is a different balance card, right? But I like that we are building something upward. So we're deliberate in our direction taking. It would have been so easy to obviously, use a compass or something like that. But I actually quite like this image, and I like the flying. You think about a flock of birds, and the way that they kind of fly to the point. I liked that, and yes, thank you, Molly. That also, when you're going on hikes, you'll see these as well. So there's like a lot of different connotations that you can use for this, and so I like it. It's a little bit different than we think of with direction cards, and I think it works really well. So I quite like that. Inspiration is beautiful. It's just like bursting out. This is the whole network of roots and trees, the way that everything is connected. We gain our inspiration from the web. Like this, to me, there's no difference between the root system and the web. Everything is interconnected. And if we can get down beneath the surface and see the way everything just spreads out, there's just a wealth of inspiration. There's a wealth of energy to pull from that I think is really cool. Drifting, another canoe. We do see quite a few canoes that are here or in this deck. But I like this because this is different, right? It's different energy than the other things that we've seen. This isn't a direction. This is just drifting. This is letting go and just letting things and move. It's kind of like the meander card in the Illuminated Earth. It's really beautiful. And I like the way that it just drops off. You really don't know where you're going when you are drifting. So I quite like that. That's the last of the cards. Again, I didn't have those in alphabetical order. So, we were just doing them as they were. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 or so. I think you could probably make cases in some of the other cards as well. About 11 of them seem to be directly related to tarot and to the major arcana, but not in a way that feels like it's forced. They feel like, yes, the major arcana shows major archetypes, and it makes sense that some of those archetypes are going to show up in a deck. So it doesn't feel invasive to the oracle deck, and it doesn't feel forced or anything. It feels like a real natural melding of those archetypes. So yeah, as I said when I started, I've had this deck for a while, so I have actually used it. It's beautiful. I think it reads really well. I think that the number of cards and the energies that are there allow for, using this however you would want to do this. Like you could easily do for directions spread. You could easily use this as the main spread. Let's just put a couple out just so we can see how they might show up here, although I don't have a lot of space without reorienting my camera and making you all nauseous. I like this because I almost see the choice to let go and drift towards gratitude, right? That let things just sort of drift towards a feeling of gratitude. You can't force it. I don't know. It's a choice to let go. And that's going to lead you to a place of gratitude. It has, I will say, and Shay brought this up. I say Shay, I'm so sorry. Alchemy's Arrow. I know that annoys people because then they're like, who are you talking about? So I apologize. It has, even oh, I'm frozen. Am I frozen? Oh, dear. Can anybody still see me? Or maybe it's just frozen on my computer. I don't know now. I'm going to pause. Yeah, I think I was just paused on my actual computer. There is a way in which it reads a bit cartomantic, because I think of the single word titles. There has that sense you can read it pretty quick and pretty clear, or you can dive in because there's so many layers, as we saw. There's so many things that are going on that you can, I feel like, dive deep, or you can read it as a very earthy form of cartomancy where you just get these quick sentences that just tell you you what it is that you need to see. I mostly, because for myself, I'm for the most part doing 3-card readings. I just like to pull a quick 3-card. I think that that's generally how I do it, but I think that this could be, I don't have the space really to do more, but you could certainly do a 4 directions, a 4 elements reading. You could, I think, get a really in-depth reading with the with this deck because of the number of cards, but that's not only it. You can get a great with the cartomancy with 36 cards with Lenormand. There's just something about it has a bit of a cartomancy feel to it in a nature oriented deck, which is quite nice. It's not something you always see. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this. Again, this has been a look at the Roots and Wings Oracle deck. Just to reiterate, this deck is the first edition. The new edition that you can get is the second edition, and the font has changed. It is a script, like a handwriting font, and so it is going to look different than this. The card stock is the same according to someone who has them both, and the backing is a little bit more muted, which saturation's been taken down a little bit on the back. That seems to be the main differences between the first and the second edition. There is also a mini edition, but there is some question about whether or not you get all of the cards here. So just in case you missed that part and you dived in here, I feel like the mini, to me, I'm probably going to pick up the mini, and I don't generally have doubles of things like Oracle decks very often, but what this reminds me of is another deck. I don't know if this is available, so don't shoot me if it's out of print, but it's totally different art style. Hers is a very precise art style in terms of, it's a different type of art style. But this is another one of those very complete systems. It has a system of suits and levels within those suits. And it's one of my favorite little sort of cartomancy style oracle decks, and I feel like these two have something in common in that sense, but this feels more animistic. You might say shamanistic. Some people get misleading by that term, but for me it has a very animistic, earthy based feel to it, but with that cartomancy flair. And so it reminds me of this, which is, again, an oracle deck that feels very cartomantic. This is called a Curious Oracle. It was out of print. It came back in print. I don't know if it's still in print or not. It's just a really fabulous thing. And this kind of reminds me of this just feels a little bit more, it is very similar, not at all the same, but it has that feeling like you can get a full reading with this set, very cartomancy style. Whereas this one, I think is the same. I think it might really be nice to have a mini version of that to do like 9 cards and stuff like that. I think would be really beautiful. So anyways, the name of the deck is Roots and Wings Oracle Deck by Kate Rials, and thank you, Patrick, for putting up another link to it. And just remember that the font has changed, so make sure you look at that if you do go to purchase it, and make sure that's fine, because you aren't going to see the same. You're not going to see the same font there. And the one that I just was talking about was a Curious Oracle. I think if you can find it, it would be on Etsy. Not a cheap deck, gorgeous cardstock, but a really fantastic one. Okay. I'm going to let you go so that we can kind of keep this concise for anybody watching it back. Thank you for being patient with any technical difficulties that we had. I appreciate that. And I understand for those that might this not be their favorite format. I completely understand that live walkthroughs are not always the best format, but every once in a while it's fun, and there's something a little bit different about it that I quite enjoy, the interactiveness. And so I'm not ditching regular ones either. This, sometimes when I'm in the mood for doing it this way, that's the way it will go. But there will also be the other ones as well. So don't moan too much if this isn't to your liking. So I will talk to you guys all later, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the night. I'm going to have to make you a little sick, so maybe look away if you get nauseous, because I have to end here. Oh, and there goes my fingers. I have to end on my phone, so I apologize. And now I don't see how to end it. I will see you all later.